huge number of challenges in bringing a sort of animated character to life in the real world, and it's an extraordinary ability, but it's definitely not easy. When I started on Paddington, I was nervous because there wasn't a huge number of films that had used animated characters in a real-world setting, and it seemed to me that one of the challenges of Paddington was not just making a photorealistic bear, but to make a London that was stylized enough that a Paddington walking down the street would feel eccentric and surprising, but not completely impossible.
You must be Mr. Gruber.
And you must be the young gentleman whose hat sounds so fascinating. Welcome.
I think it took significantly over a year to find the look of Paddington, which seems ridiculous when you go, well, we knew so much about him to begin with. I suppose you just go, well, I think I know what Paddington looks like, roughly. You know, it sort of feels if you asked a 5-year-old to draw Paddington, they could do a fairly, you know, decent go of it. You know, he's got a red hat and a blue duffel coat. And there were things I knew, like I didn't want him to have wellies, because I felt they infantilized him. But then you suddenly go, actually, there's loads of Paddingtons, and the Ivywood one looks very different from the Peggy Fortnum one. And discovering who he was took a long time with drawings and looking at animals. Then when we sort of put him in the computer, as it were, and had a sort of 3D build of him, you still discover more and more things about him, and it was very painstaking. I think what I learnt doing it was that a drawing will only get you so far, and we probably spent too long at that phase and not quite long enough actually having him as a living, breathing being, as it were, because these characters exist in movement. So if you're doing scenes, as I've tended to do with an animated character and lots of live-action humans, then you have to get the actors to interact with this creature where you're not always necessarily sure what it's going to be doing or quite how it's going to be, you know, moving later. We tried various techniques on Paddington to sort of help the other actors. I mean, it's a real back and forth process, because I think you can discover some things on set and you can try and figure as much out as you can, but really, once you get into the animation, it's all going to change again, and the timing of the scene will change, and the mood of the scene will change, and things that you thought you might have needed a line of dialogue to express, you discover you can express with a look or a turn of the head or a gust of wind blowing through their fur or something. And so really it's a very labor-intensive and sort of iterative process, because you sort of essentially have to get everything in the scene as perfect as you can, and then, especially in something like Paddington, put the heart of the scene in afterwards. It's more like you would do in rehearsals with an actor, where you'd block the scene and you try it, and sometimes you try your blocking and it doesn't feel right when the actor's doing it, or it doesn't feel right to them, or it doesn't feel right to you. And, you know, you discover things and the script evolves and the lines change, especially if you're working with talented actors and sort of great improvisers, that it'll evolve, and that process you have to go on with the animators.
Well, go on. You try it. Look at the throat. Mr. Brown, that is extremely rude.
I always feel in a film, every department tries to use its particular skill set to solve a problem. Animators like to animate because that's literally what they do. And I think the hardest thing in animation, which good actors are very good at doing, is doing not very much. And it can always look like you've accidentally forgotten to render the frames and the character's just frozen. But that stillness is very, very difficult. And there's a shot right at the end of Paddington where he's writing his sort of final letter home to Aunt Lucy, and he's looking out the window and he's going, I'm a bear called Paddington. And he's thinking these thoughts. But he had to look out of the window and sort of be. The temptation will be to add eye flicks here and there, and a sniff, and a, you know, maybe he'll, you know, a deep breath and a sigh, and I think overacting on an animation front is the easiest thing to do in the world. The restraint to not do too much is a real secret. I actually hugely enjoy the lengthy, iterative process, because I find I learn things about the scene each time and each shot, and being able to go into the detail is my idea of fun. The difference between funny and not funny is a frame. And the difference between heartbreaking and not is a quarter of an eyebrow or a brow furrow or a... It's so tricky. And I remember people sort of saying, oh, well, Paddington, you know, of course you feel emotional at the end of a Paddington film. He's just such a nice bear. And you go, no. He's nice because every single frame has been lovingly, painstakingly handcrafted.
Paddington! Oh, sorry.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. Joblo remains an independent company, and we appreciate all of your support.